100%. And where's the human again? It is ensuring we have responsible AI. Are you treating PII in the right way? Are you being able to inspect where you are with that at any time? Have you classified that information? Are you using AI to help you do that? And ensure there's security throughout the work stream, ensuring that data is synced.
Welcome back to Tech Transform, where we explore AI's impact on the future of business. My name is Kevin Petrie. I'm VP of Research at BARC, where I lead the data management practice and focus quite a bit on the intersection of data and AI. Really excited to have the opportunity today to speak with and learn from Anne Maya, EMEA CTO at Boomi. Anne Maya brings nearly 2 decades of software industry experience. She specializes in SaaS general management, strategic planning, product management, and go-to-market strategies. Anne's focus includes platform management solutions and strategic positioning. She has a proven track record in driving successful SaaS transitions. So Anne, great to be with you here today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Kevin. Really happy to be here.
So for our listeners who might be new to the concept of AI agents and intelligent automation, let's roll it back a little bit. We often hear about AI's potential to transform businesses. I think you and I both agree that this is a compelling opportunity. With that said, definitions and perceptions can vary quite a bit depending on which part of the elephant a given person is looking at a different time. In your view, what is an agent and what business problem does it aim to solve?
Okay, well, great question. And yeah, we're starting big with the big questions. I think it's interesting to think of the perspective I come from. So yes, I'm the EMEA CTO for Boomi. I've been with Boomi for 5 years now. And one thing that we see a lot with our customers is we've helped many organizations transition into a more digital world, right? So this means taking all their business critical systems, bringing it together and creating automation that will allow them to keep up with technology times and stay competitive. Now, why that perspective is interesting is because we are now in the AI world where we've seen so much disruption already starting to happen, but we haven't yet seen that one trigger that is going to make everything just explode with AI. We've just seen a lot of experimentation. So many people have predicted this is the year, 2025 is the year of the agents, and I think many research analysts have had their own view of it, but they pretty much agree this is the year of the agent. What that means is we went from, automation in the technology world with software, and I've been in the business a while. You mentioned almost 20 years. I think it's actually over 20 years at this stage, but I've seen a lot, right? We've seen a lot of, coding that will create automation, and then low code that almost adds abstraction to coding now, and that makes that easier. And then we moved into automated processes that create black boxes that were once strings of programs together. Now, what agents are offering us is this world to go beyond that. So you still have all of these automated processes, but now there's somebody else in the driver's seat, and that is a technology thing. So an agent, at the very, very bare bones of it, is an entity that's an autonomous entity that can perceive its environment, process information, and act upon that information to achieve outcomes. That's essentially it. It can essentially, I'm going to use lots of double quotes here that people can't see in the podcast, but observes, it thinks, and it acts. Now, why that's important is because we're in the world of generative AI, right? Where now we're talking about automatic processes, but now those processes can be put together in more autonomous ways, in novel ways. So using that same information to find better ways of doing things we always did. That's the real beauty of an agent. And we're going to start to see lots of levels of them, from very simplistic. We're just starting with one goal and one objective and completing a series of tasks to get to that objective. And there's still perhaps human in the loop in that process, to more complex agents that can go to the level of reasoning and memorizing and being able to create those novel processes.
So I like that. I think there's always the skeptic in us that says, well, software has been automating workflows for 30 or 40 years. What's new? The level of autonomy is going to vary, but fundamentally you're looking at an application that's going to perceive, like you were saying, and then make a decision and act on that. And it does seem, in my view, to still require some human oversight and interaction to make sure that the humans are staying on top of what's happening and enriching the workflows and making sure that the decisions don't go sideways in the near term. Would you agree with that assessment that there's still a human role and the level of autonomy is going to vary? It'll get more autonomous over time, but initially we do need a human role in there.
I absolutely agree. And I think this is something that will evolve over time. I mean, we've seen that evolution of automation. And I remember giving a keynote a couple of years ago saying, we've all been in this industry for a long time talking about automation. And I remember saying things like, oh, well, you have more free time to spend with your family or do your hobbies. We've never seen that realized, right? What happens is you save yourself an hour and then you spend that hour doing other types of work, right? So this has been the reality of our existence. Ultimately, where AI could take us is that point where we actually do have that time to ourselves. But the oversight becomes important, that ability to see where is it important to have the human, what values or what information do we bring to it that is unique to a human perspective. And absolutely, today we're at that stage where you do need some human oversight. And part of the reason is because the data that's feeding that perception. So if you think about the agent and the different ingredients that go into creating an agent, you have the perception, which is it creates an input from something. That's usually a human triggering that. In the future, we'll see agents talking to agents, but right now it's usually a human writing something into a text box. And now that is going to be perceived by an environment that's defined by humans. So we've defined what is the task of this agent, what's their role, what's their personality, what scope do they have? What's the agency of the agent? And then you're going to have the brain element. Now, this is where somebody has designed, the designer of the agent has decided which language model, perhaps. Maybe it's a machine learning algorithm. Maybe it's a small language model. Maybe it's a combination of them, and that goes into the brain. So the brain will now have this element of memory, as well as short-term and long-term memory, where it can do the planning and reasoning. And then the other aspect, a pretty key aspect, is this concept of tools. So what tools does it have at its disposal to be able to create the tasks that it needs to complete the job? Now, all along the way, these tasks are going to have to be outlined by the agent of what's the right thing to do. Sometimes you may need an additional authorization to access some data that perhaps is more secure. Other times you may just need someone to go in there and observe what is this agent doing, making sure the performance is good, because there's still a cost element here. If you're using a large language model and you want high quality results, you may be paying a higher price for that processing and that context.
So I like what you're describing, and I think that this is the year of the agent in the sense that some indicators show pretty massive adoption. We're seeing about a third of companies are in production with agents. Most of that is more limited production as opposed to full production. But it's also interesting to look at the Model Context Protocol, MCP, and Google's announcement last week of the agent-to-agent protocol, so that these agents can talk to a lot of tools and get the data, and the agents start to talk to each other as well. You could have an agent that goes out and represents you in different marketplaces and buys something when prices hit a certain level. All these ways in which the robots can start to work for you. So it's cool stuff. But it does introduce certain risks in terms of security and governance. And I'd love to hear about your thoughts on that in terms of practical advice you could offer on establishing those effective control mechanisms. How do you make sure that these models don't, or I should say the applications, the agents using the model extracts are going to go sideways?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that as well. And I think a recent study by BARC has shown that seems like 28% of high readiness enterprise firms are struggling with integration. So I think it starts there. Are you feeding the right information to your AI? Do you have a ready-made foundation, solid foundation of trusted data, first of all? Because before you have that, a lot of what you can do with that agent is limited. And also, before you have that, you don't really know potentially where that data is coming from, and is it trusted, or is the access of the right level for that person who's trying to use it, right? So when we go into the world of MCP, what MCP is essentially doing is model context protocol. So like you said, where Anthropic has developed that, and they've got some pretty big players now leaning into that. What that gives you is this ability to have a protocol that's common among providers and users and creators that will allow them to control the language model to tooling relationship. So you can start to, the agent, I mentioned tools is a big part of it. The agent can have a common way of communicating with tools. So potentially choosing which is the right tool to instigate that task that you need, right? But if you want, in your words, if you don't want that agent to have too much agency and eventually go sideways, how do you better control that? It's with guardrails. So the guardrails have to be built into the design of the agent, but that you need to put those guardrails around many things. Some of it is data. So have you, as an organization, successfully classified and protected your PII, your personally identifiable information? That's critical. Overall, for responsible AI, everyone should be thinking about that. Are you protecting your customers, your partners, your own employees' data? So that's one aspect. But also, that data is coming in at different frequencies, right? So you're going to be getting it from many different types of providers, and you're going to give it to different consumers of the data through your agent. And are you protecting that along the way as well? Do you have the right identity and access attached to that? And is that being leveraged in the right way by role, by group, et cetera? So there's this concept of federated governance that should be applied across your data and, importantly, your APIs, because APIs are typically how tools are communicating within the agentic framework. There's a lot here, and stop me because I could go on
No, this is
forever.
good. This is
But
fantastic. So what I think is particularly interesting about Boomi is that you've got you're operating in the application layer with a lot of API integration and so forth, and the data management layer. And that gets to kind of the heart of a lot of agentic AI innovation. In my view, you have three life cycles. One is the model life cycle that the data scientists are managing, building, training, implementing these models. Then there's the data life cycle, building pipelines, putting them into production. Of course, there's the application life cycle, building and optimizing those applications. And so I think that that's where I'd love to hear Boomi's perspective about how you have those two areas of strength for you, the data people and the application people. How are those stakeholders working together, and what are some best practices for them?
yeah, that's a great question. And I think maybe what we should be doing is introducing some examples here just to give it a bit more life. So if we think about an order fulfillment process, let's say you're a retail manufacturer and you have an order fulfillment process, and you think, okay, well, what we really need is an agent to manage delivery messages, because sometimes, during a promotional, maybe Black Friday or, something like that, a Christmas sale, you might have a lot of orders coming through, and maybe some of those delivery agents might have a problem, like whatever it is, they have to deal with elements in the world like weather, whatever. So there may be a delay in one provider. Maybe you want to be able to route that to a second provider so your customer still gets their product in time for Christmas. So in order to manage that, maybe you think that would be a brilliant agent to be able to autonomously do that. But this is something where a human couldn't possibly get access to all the information it needs in your accounts and your distributors, the relationship between contacts, et cetera, or contracts. So an agent would be perfect for this. The human aspect here comes in when it maybe you just approve, should we switch to this provider? And maybe that gets alerted to somewhere. Or maybe you just leave it to the agent. And that happens. But then on the other side, you also have your inventory that needs to be managed. Do we have enough inventory to ship? Maybe that's a different agent. So this needs to communicate over here. Behind all of those systems, you have an integration. So you need to ensure that your Salesforce and your inventory system, maybe even your account system, maybe NetSuite for finance, they all are integrated so they can work together and feed that agent with the right context it needs to make the right decisions. And then the inventory agent also, maybe there's a different warehouse tool or something else that feeds that. All of these systems have to be humming for this to work the way that you want it to work. So all of these systems still rely on sound integration, data management, and API management solutions. So part of the overall, like maybe the monitoring observability of the agent itself is, what if an API has a problem? Because technologies are moving really fast. What if your Salesforce API has an update, but your agent was relying on an older API that maybe didn't recognize that new field, and now you need to update it. How are you going to know that's affecting your overall system? Because it's quite autonomous. There's lots of handoffs. Well, this is where you need some common oversight, like a registry across all your agents to say which APIs are they using and are there problematic ones. But you want that ability to control it as well. So kill that API if it's not functioning properly, find out everywhere it's being used, and be able to fix it. This level of control, federated governance and control, also happens very much so in the API world, which, okay, let's say you're listening and you're like, agents are in the future. The future is now, but right now you are using APIs. So those APIs have that same problem. So how do you ensure that you have that kind of control and governance today anyway? And this is where I think you mentioned our unique perspective at Boomi. Our whole ethos is about a unified platform because we're seeing our customers have these problems. The really quick on the innovation cycle ones, and the ones who are maybe more risk averse, and they're kind of waiting to see what happens in this agentic world. And these other guys are going to be the guinea pigs, but we're seeing all of that now. So we've planned for this, elevating that kind of federated governance and control at the API management layer into the AI world and the agentic AI. So we're applying those same concepts. But you did mention as well that the innovation cycles are different for different companies, right? So we're going to have large language models that are very, very quickly creating new models. There may be new protocols out there. How do you stay on top of all of that as well? So again, we've got some really great technology partners that are on the edge of that. One thing that they're really looking at, and we're working with them on as well, is orchestration that can be agnostic. So you're not embedded into any one system. If systems change, you can pop a new LLM in or out of that orchestration canvas and be able to have a new flow that works automatically.
So that's a good segue. Another question I had is the interoperability and the modularity is critical. We talk about data products now where you can have these Lego pieces, take it out here, put it in there, and so forth. And I think looking at agents and even elements within agents as similar building blocks, they're reusable, they're standard, they're modular, makes a lot of sense. MCP and then Google's agent-to-agent protocol can help in that regard. Are there other ways in which organizations can and should adopt agents without incurring technical debt, taking shortcuts today that increase complexity or reduce future options?
No, that's a great question. And I think we're starting to see that too. There was so much excitement when, 2 years ago when ChatGPT was launched, everyone went all in on it, tons of experimentation. I think what we saw at the end of that last year was that, okay, that experimentation was fantastic. It didn't result in a huge amount of AI solutions hitting the market, to your point earlier in the podcast, right? So this year is the year of value has to be shown. Like, I don't think organizations are playing around anymore. They're like, okay, that was fun. Now let's actually get some value and some ROI out of all of this stuff. And what we're going to see is, to your earlier point about there's so much advancement, they're happening at different tracks. People who said I'd never look at an open source system are saying, that looks kind of interesting. And we've been down this road. History has this habit of repeating itself. We've been down this road where modularity, we were like, okay, yes, we're all in on modularity again. We went away and I think if we look at disruptive technology waves, the super complex was always replaced, right? We can't forget that. So how do you keep it simple and make sure that that solidly works today so you're ready to go tomorrow and build upon it and not have to scrap it and start again? And I think modular is the key there. And at the agentic level, you mentioned the Lego blocks. I love that because I often use that same analogy. Like, what is the smallest Lego block? It keeps changing, right? Originally it was code, libraries, and then it turned into low code chunks and shapes. And now it's turned into maybe agents are the next Lego block that we build upon. But what makes that Lego block buildable? Like, what makes it not, Duplo or something that was totally different? What keeps it in that common standard that everybody needs? That's MCP, but also the way it's crafted, right? So if you think with modularity in mind, so let me go back to order fulfillment process example I had. If that agent that is monitoring shipping agent alerts is so rigidly created that it can't communicate with that inventory agent, then you're not going to be able to build those together into a whole system, which is a multi-agent system that can work across the board, which would be wonderful for your order fulfillment. So this is what we've often said, like build it with an agnostic orchestration model in place where you can collaborate across different teams globally, wherever they are, and they can kind of come into, let's say it's an integration canvas where you're orchestrating your AI agent. Anyone from another country or wherever can just log into your canvas and start to work off that. And then you can use, we have an agent garden where you post all of your agents that you've created with Boomi, and they could see them, borrow them, reuse those components going forward.
So one of the interesting things that I've enjoyed exploring over the last couple of years with AI is you have the AI or application layer, and then below that you have the data layer, but it's a two-way relationship. I think a lot of our discussion today is focused on how applications, in this case agents, are consuming data in order to put models to work. But there's also the notion of applications helping manage data. So data helps applications, but also applications help manage data. And so you mentioned a survey that Boomi has sponsored. We have a launch party for the report tomorrow, and Boomi will be represented, which is great. We found that within that, there's a lot of demand for data management agents that help manage data, and a lot of demand for data integration, for security, for metadata generation, all pretty cool things because you can help the data engineers who are pretty overburdened. They have a booming supply of data, a booming demand for data, and they're trying to manage the pipelines in between. These new data management APIs, or data management agents, can help them. Curious if you have any thoughts on that and what Boomi offers in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, if ever there was a group of people who had to deal with a lot of time-consuming, mundane, but super critical work,
Yes.
you enter the the people in the data management world,
I like
right?
to
So
call it the busiest job in IT, data engineering.
yeah, I'm really underappreciated. But I think, that is, it's such a critical role, and you make something, you make a mistake, it can have big foundational problems, right? So yes, absolutely. And I think this is also, I'm going to go on a little bit tangent here because I think to succeed in this world, to succeed in the AI revolution, we are going to need to have trusted partners. Nobody's going to do this alone. No one person, no one organization is going to, dominate this. It's going to be a group effort with lots of trusted um, providers. You need to have a vendor that you can trust. So, do they have a compliance page? How critically are they taking security? That sort of thing. But also, who's using AI today? Because if they're not using AI, they will not help you, right? They don't understand it. You have to go with a culture of AI across every business. Whether or not you're going to invest heavily into it, everyone must understand AI because this is our future, right? So one thing we've done at Boomi is we very early on went all in on AI. And just to answer your question about data management, we started building our own agents to work within our canvas. So we totally believe you need AI to live in the AI world. So we have AI agents with embedded in the Boomi canvas, and they continue to grow. So for data management, as an example, we can automatically create a data profile. We can start to look at the cross-functional aspects of a unified platform between API, data, and integration, and be able to leverage those things in tooling. So one example of what you're talking about there is data stewardship, right? This ability to quarantine if the data comes in, looks slightly dodgy or like not complete or whatever, to quarantine that data and then be able to assign it automatically to someone to manage it. I call this creating a data flywheel. So for Trusted Data Foundation, you need to ensure that you have a dynamic way of managing all types of data and make sure that you don't have data management as a separate exercise, that it's part of the way that you do business and it's part of your foundational system. But in order to deal with these massive volumes of data that are coming, you need AI within the system.
Yeah, I think so. I agree completely. And I think that it really underscores, in a lot of ways, the need to train data engineers and other stakeholders, application developers, and so forth, on what they can do with AI. That was another finding from our research that AI skills are a big focus It's not about replacing workers. It's about empowering them to use AI. That's the critical.
100%. And where's the human again? I think that was one of your original questions.
Yeah.
It is ensuring we have responsible AI. Are you treating PII in the right way? Are you being able to inspect where you are with that at any time? Have you classified that information? Are you using AI to help you do that? And ensure there's security throughout the work stream, ensuring that that data is synced. I don't know. Okay, this is a slight tangent again, but have you seen the probably not a good thing to bring up right now, but like, have you seen the tariff meme, the video of the tariff runway? I mean, so I'm not going to get political, but I think it's kind of funny because I saw this. It's popping up everywhere, where you have different AI has been generated a video that shows different countries walking down a runway with the tariff printed on their chest, and like each caricature represents that country. And there's, for example, a penguin going down with 10% on its belly, and you have different world leaders. And the reason I bring this up is because a couple of the world leaders were not the current world leader. So I think, I was thinking this is a funny little video, but also the fact that whatever generated that video was not completely up to date in the world. Whatever was that data set that it was trained on is a little out of date. So if you think about like what we're doing in our world, and I know it's kind of maybe more boring, it's not going to be as interesting as that, but we are putting business critical systems in the hands of this powerful modeling. And in order to really leverage it right, we need to ensure that it's grounded in the current context of our data, because things will fluctuate. Think about foreign exchange rates, the price of doing business with different countries or suppliers. All of this is always going to change over time. So how do you ensure that that data is always up to date?
Very timely. I think Canada's changed prime ministers. Tariff rates change almost on a real-time basis, sometimes faster than currency markets these days. So the need for current data is very critical. I agree completely. So that's great.
Facts are important.
We could probably have a longer conversation about economic merits of all that. So this is good stuff. Thank you very much, Anne, for joining us today. It's a very educational conversation for me. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope you took a lot away from today's podcast. If you want to learn more about what we're talking about, I definitely encourage folks to go to boomi.com. We'll be back next week with another episode in our podcast series. In the meantime, you can subscribe wherever you listen and join the conversation on social media at EM360 Tech on X and LinkedIn. So for more great content, you can head over to their website as well.